Mutual News via satellite. I'm Mike McCluskey. Is up and somewhat anxious over the weather at Cape Kennedy in Florida, where a landing is planned on Friday morning. A few minutes ago, Mission Control in Houston told the crew to take a look at a weather system in the Gulf of Mexico, a system that's not expected to move out in time for Friday's landing. This is Mutual News.
LBJ Austin.
Both heads for the mountains as his Polish tour nears its close. The House votes today on a cap for the July 1st tax cut. Good morning, this is Reed Collins with the CBS World News Roundup, reporting from Krakow, Poland.
This update on the situation from Judy Muller at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
It appears the shuttle will not be landing tomorrow, that according to NASA's General James Abramson this hour. Abramson's statement apparently was based on the weather forecast for Kennedy Space Center. That's the preferred landing site. Air Force meteorologists were slightly more optimistic this morning, but it was still a toss-up, with a forecast calling for patches of cloud cover alternating with clear skies. The astronauts must have a definite word on go for landing no later than about 4.5 hours before scheduled touchdown. Still no decision as to where the landing will be if it comes on Saturday at Edwards Air Force Base or here in Florida. The crew still does not know of any delay decision. When Commander Bob Crippen asked if he should start packing up the shuttle in preparation for landing, Mission Control said they would give him definite word after the crew finished their lunch this hour, and NASA officials are still conferring on the matter. Judy Muller, CBS News, at Space Headquarters, Florida.
Mutual News via satellite. I'm Frank Gentry.
Will we have a landing at Kennedy tomorrow?
NASA's James Abramson at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. If there is a delay, the shuttle could remain up until Sunday.
Time at the tone exactly 12 noon.
CBS News, I'm Mitchell Krause. Have just about made up their minds about the return tomorrow of the Space Shuttle Challenger. Steve Young has details.
Still hoping the weather will permit the first Florida landing ever of a space shuttle tomorrow, Chief Air Force Meteorologist Major Donald Green says the big question will be what happens right after dawn.
If you saw the last couple of mornings, a lot of clouds moved in right after the sun came up. And that's because there's low-level moisture. And once we get some heating, we get some vertical transport of that moisture. And as it rises, it cools, and then it condenses.
If there is a lot of moisture, there will be a lot of low clouds, and Challenger will be waved off to land instead at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Although an apparent problem with part of shuttle's steering system seems to have cleared up, the mission will not be extended to make a Florida landing more probable. Steve Young, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida.
Left side as you go over the Gulf there, and you'll see some weather patterns that we don't think are going to move out for the next 2 or 3 days, and it's really looking bad over the Cape.
Okay. I think it wasn't doing too great. I think we've packed enough food for us to stay up here 6, 8, 10 days.
The weather prognosis for the Kennedy Space Center was bad this morning, and the word from NASA was no landing Friday. But then someone started doing a Sundance, says NASA's number 3 man, and the forecast started looking better, at least slowly. Then one of 3 auxiliary power units failed. It's working again, but it's still shaky. And even so, the decision has been made to land tomorrow, somewhere. Even Lieutenant General James Abramson isn't sure whether he should fly to Kennedy or to Edwards Air Force Base in California.
I can tell you there'll be several of us up in orbit here trying to decide whether to go east or west.
The choice right now is Florida at 5:53 Houston time, but if the weather's bad then, there's another chance at 7:23. If it's still no go, then California, here we come. At midnight, the jets will start making practice landings, but it could be shortly before the scheduled deorbit burn before the final decision is made. The crew is packing up anyway, getting ready to come home somewhere. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Wayne Dolcefino, KTRH News.
Speaking of weather in Florida, we had an umbrella warning out this morning from KTRH meteorologist Joe Sobel.
CBS News, I'm Mitchell Krause. Unless the weather in Florida at Cape Canaveral is unacceptable, the Space Shuttle Challenger will land there tomorrow as originally scheduled or be redirected to California. High-pressure problems involving one of Challenger's 3 auxiliary power units forced officials to abandon plans to extend the mission to await better Florida weather. On Wall Street...
Well, we seem to be having a problem getting Doug on the line. Perhaps we'll have that report for you in a while.
Shuttle today was only temporary, but it was enough to scare the brass at NASA into deciding to bring the Challenger home tomorrow. Now, the storms over the Cape are forecast to clear out by late this afternoon or early this evening. That would open the door to 2 chances for a landing at the Cape. But if that bad weather lingers over Florida, NASA says the shuttle will probably touch down at Edwards Air Force Base. Edwards is also the expected landing site if the shuttle's other 2 auxiliary power units fail. But for right now, the work in the air is over with, and a few minutes ago it was time for the people in Mission Control to...
Good night, lady. Good night, gentlemen. Good night, Crip. We'll let you go to
said it was terrible. They'll wake up about 8 hours from now to start what may be their last day in space. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Muller, KTRH News.
CBS News, I'm Dallas Townsend. Not solved an auxiliary power unit problem today, and they're now preparing to return to Earth tomorrow. Challenger is scheduled to touch down at the primary landing area at Cape Canaveral at 6:53 a.m. Eastern Time if the weather cooperates. If it doesn't, they'll fly another 2 orbits and land at Edwards Air Force Base in California. It was down
This is The World Tonight. Good evening. I'm Marlene Sanders, CBS News. And in Houston earlier today over whether the Space Shuttle Challenger would be able to land in Florida tomorrow, weather being the X factor. But finally, NASA officials decided to proceed as originally scheduled. Steve Young reports from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
The landing will take place tomorrow morning as scheduled, even if weather forces flight controllers to wave Challenger off to California for a landing at Edwards Air Force Base, the secondary landing site. Weather here has been marginal but improving enough, according to Associate NASA Administrator General James Abramson, to hope for a Florida shuttle landing, the first ever.
We think that it's proper to, in fact, go ahead with the landing plan and the preparations for a landing at Kennedy tomorrow.
Shortly before they went to sleep this afternoon, the crew asked Mission Control to forecast the probability of landing the shuttle where it was launched.
The weather has continued to improve from a forecast viewpoint, and then we look reasonably optimistic.
A plan to wait out the Florida weather by spending a few extra days in orbit was dropped due to a potential steering problem, a problem which ironically has disappeared. Steve Young, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida.
CBS News, I'm Dallas Townsend. Challenger will come back to Earth tomorrow, but whether in Florida or California is still something of a question. Steve Young reports from Kennedy Space Center.
Top NASA officials are heading back to the Kennedy Space Center from Houston, hoping to view the first Florida landing of a space shuttle tomorrow morning. But the space agency is hedging its bets. A skeleton team is also standing by at Edwards Air Force Base, the secondary landing site, in case poor Florida weather forces a landing in California. Landings here would occur tomorrow morning at about 5 to 7 or 8:30 Eastern Time. A California landing would take place shortly before 10 in the morning. Hundreds of thousands of spectators watch the blast-off. Landing, if it occurs here, will be by invitation only before a small audience. The smallest crowd of all would see the return of Challenger if it's a California landing. Steve Young, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida.
Cape is still cloudy tonight, but the forecasters are still optimistic the Challenger can come down to clearer skies tomorrow morning. The shuttle has 3 chances to land tomorrow. 2 of them come at Cape Kennedy, 1 of them at Edwards Air Force Base in California. The earliest landing opportunity would bring the Challenger down on time for a landing at Cape Kennedy at 5:53 a.m. But the Cape has been shrouded these past few days by an early morning fog. Now, the next landing opportunity would come on the next orbit at 7:29 in the morning. morning. If all that fails, the Challenger would be waved off from the Cape entirely to touch down on its next orbit in California at 8:56 a.m. A chase plane cut through the clouds today and discovered that even in bad weather, Commander Bob Crippen could probably see the runway. But the big concern is not mainly with visibility, it's with turbulence. Flying a 4.5-ton glider down from Mach 4 in a rainstorm would be tricky, to say the least. Then there is concern about the damage that such a landing might cause the Challenger, especially those thermal tiles. They're about as soft as styrofoam. Hitting them with raindrops at a velocity faster than the speed of sound would be something like flying into a shower of gravel. So tonight, as the astronauts wake up for their landing day, it is still not clear when or where they're coming home. Whatever happens to the Challenger, live coverage of the landing will come during the Friday morning report here on KTRH. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Muller, KTRH News.
CBS News, I'm Jay Jones. Let's have awakened for the final hours of their 6-day mission. The intent is to land the space shuttle at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida if the weather is clear enough. Touchdown would be about 7 minutes before 7 Friday morning Eastern Daylight Time. Later landings are possible in Florida or at Edwards Air Force Base in California.
News via satellite. I'm Mike McCleskey. The crew of Space Shuttle Challenger's up, stowing gear and checking figures for the long ride down to Earth about 6 hours from now. Just after the wake-up call before midnight Eastern Time, there was this exchange between Mary Cleve at Mission Control in Houston and astronaut Bob Crippen aboard Challenger.
Good morning down there, and thanks for the fight song. Go Seminoles. And we'll let the rest of them tell you how we're doing this morning, which is great.
Morning to you, and hope you're all feeling well. We're looking forward to seeing you today.
Thank you, Mary. We're looking forward to coming home. Hope everything's still looking good.
Bob Crippen and Mission Capcom Mary Cleve. The weather in Florida, where Challenger is expected to make the first ever shuttle landing at the Kennedy Space Center, is the only visible problem right now. There's still a 50-50 chance of heavy clouds and some rain for landing time. So far, however, there's been no change in plans for Challenger's landing Friday morning. This is Mutual News.
CBS News, I'm Jay Jones. Challenger will be home for the weekend if all goes according to plan. The 5 Space Shuttle astronauts are stowing things away and straightening up for a return to Earth Friday morning. Commander Robert Crippen intends to glide the shuttle to its first landing at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's cloudy there right now, but forecasters hold up the possibility of enough clearing after daybreak to allow Challenger a clear shot. The first possible touchdown time is 7 minutes before 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. A second try could be made 90 minutes later, but if the weather is socked in, the shuttle would then land at Edwards Air Force Base in California. More when CBS News continues.
Satellite, this is Mutual News. Space Shuttle Challenger's landing at the Kennedy Space Center has been delayed at least one orbit this morning by drizzle, low clouds, and fog. Mission Control in Houston told Challenger earlier they still hope for a Florida touchdown.
We're hoping maybe the winds will continue to pick up and blow that stuff out of there, so we're right now looking for a one-rep late start.
Live coverage on the scheduled 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time landing begins over many of these Mutual stations about 8:20.
Lower bay doors are closed and the Challenger's onboard computers are being configured for the return home this morning. The deorbit burn is about an hour and a half away. Challenger will then drop 287 feet per second, and in the hour before landing, it will drop from 25 times the speed of sound to slightly more than 200 miles per hour on touchdown. The key question is where it will land. Mother Nature is what's playing havoc with that. Fog along the Florida coast has already forced a one-orbit delay, and this is the last chance today for inaugural landing at the Kennedy Space Center. A T-38 with veteran astronaut John Young is now up, checking the weather one more time. The crew has been quiet. Commander Crippen, the veteran shuttle astronaut, keeping mission control informed of his entry systems checkout, but there's been no discussion between the crew and the ground of the weather yet. If the landing continues on schedule, KTRH live coverage begins at 7:20 this morning. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Wayne Dolcefino, KTRH News.
CBS News, this is Charles Osgood. Space Shuttle Challenger won't be landing in Florida after all. The landing there this morning has been scrubbed in favor of a return to Edwards Air Force Base in California, 3.5 hours from now. The Challenger astronauts got the word from Mission Control that the Kennedy Space Center was fogged in.
The weather at KSC is getting worse instead of getting better, so it looks like we're a no-go for KSC. So you guys can sit back and relax a little bit. KSC had a red carpet out there for you, and we'd just like to thank them over the air for their support.
More news in a minute.
Challenger will land in California later this morning. KTRH's Wayne Dolcefino is at the Johnson Space Center and has a live report.
The computers are all set for re-entry, and the red carpet was out in Florida, but NASA's top officials are in the wrong place this morning because Challenger is going to California. Mother Nature held the fate of Mission 7 in her hands, and just 45 minutes away from the scheduled deorbit burn, the fog and clouds were simply too thick. The runways and the shuttle training aircraft testing the conditions barely visible. The crew was given the news about 25 minutes ago.
We would like to go in there very much, but if the weather's bad, that's not the right thing to do, and we understand.
Had there not been a problem with one of 3 auxiliary power units on board Challenger, there could have been a one-day delay in this landing, but the decision had been made yesterday to come home. There are numerous complications. NASA's top management all in Florida, so we're not sure who's going to be there to greet them. Astronaut Dick Truly is there, and so is the Edwards Air Force Base commander. Also, there's only a mini convoy of post-landing vehicles on hand, and that could add about 2 weeks to the turnaround for the next shuttle mission. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Wayne Dolcefino, KTRH News.
They do.
California, here we come for the shuttle astronauts. Confrontation, here we come for the Congress and the President on the 1984 budget. Good morning, this is Neil Strasser with the CBS World News Roundup. It was to have come down where it started in Florida, but after a historic mission of firsts, that last first for the Space Shuttle Challenger is not to be. Steve Young has the latest from the Kennedy Space Center. The Space Shuttle Challenger will be coming back in a little less than 2 hours, but it won't be coming home. Home is the Kennedy Space Center, where it was launched last Saturday, where they had hoped to land Challenger this morning. It would have been the first time ever a shuttle landed at America's spaceport. In fact, it would have been the first time that anything launched here came back. But ground fog at the Kennedy Space Center refused to dissipate. A disappointed crew was told the decision for a Florida landing was no-go.
The KSC had a red carpet out there for you, and we'd just like to thank them over the air for their support. Yep, well, we would like to there very much, but if the weather's bad, that's not the right thing to do.
So, instead of landing on Orbit 97, it will be Orbit 98, on the other side of the continent, California, and Edwards Air Force Base. Steve Young, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida. Standing by in California is CBS News correspondent Terry Drinkwater.
The weather here at Edwards is ideal, no strong winds, and the lake bed is dry. Its flooding canceled one scheduled landing here. The ground support units here are scurrying. The lead technicians are at the Cape, the backup teams here. But NASA says even though the manpower count is lower and not all the gear is here, there will be no danger. The landing will be routine. Indeed, this morning will be the 6th time shuttle has landed at Edwards. The Florida landing would have demonstrated an important accomplishment for shuttle, the ability to land on a regular runway with crossed winds. It also would have saved money and speeded up the turnaround time for the next launch at the Cape. But because of weather, that was not to be. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, Edwards Air Force Base, California.
The landing will be broadcast live over many of the CBS Radio network stations.
25 minutes away from the start of what has been described before as the long toboggan ride back to Earth, but their destination is in Florida, but California. Mother Nature showed signs it would give NASA its inaugural landing at the Kennedy Space Center, at least by Saturday, but a faulty hydraulic power unit forced Mission Control to bring Challenger in today. Twice, Challenger went around the Earth, but the early morning fog and clouds in Florida grew more intense. Thus, the decision to land on the concrete at Edwards Air Force Base.
Weather out at Eddy is clear and good visibility and fairly decent winds. We've got a little bump down at low altitude we're going to take a look at here, and we hope to have some update for you if there's any requirements on final. But the highest wind we see at altitude is about 25 knots at 30K.
There's also a crosswind, a test Mission Control has wanted since Mission 1, so it's not a total loss. But as KTRH's Doug Miller reports, it does complicate NASA's plans.
The red carpet is not all that's going to waste out at the Cape. The ground crew that purges the shuttle of its leftover fuel and cools the bird after landing is in Florida. Edwards has been treated as a backup landing site throughout this mission, so NASA's Bill Williams says the only ground crew that's waiting for the Challenger is a mini convoy.
About all we can do with it, we do the post-landing safety assessment. We assist with crew egress, close the hatch. The orbiter is powered down as soon as the crew egresses. Close the hatch and tow the orbiter to the deservice area.
The full ground crew in Florida had its bags packed last night just in case this would happen, and an aircraft was standing by to carry that crew to California. But more important than that, the landing at California is going to cost NASA at least 8 extra days on the tight schedule before the next flight. We're now 1 hour and 24 minutes away from the scheduled landing of the Challenger. Our live coverage of the touchdown in California begins at 8:50 this morning with continuing live reports throughout the Friday morning report. Live at the Johnson Space Center for Wayne Dolcefino, I'm Doug Miller.
Dial-a-Shuttle that you have reached, brought to you by the National Space Institute, the nation's oldest citizens group supporting the space program with a grant from the makers of TAME. And our program here this week was produced and directed by Bonnie Lee Michelson. Thank you very much. An hour to go, hour and 5 minutes before the Roger. Some voice communication, Evan. I couldn't hear it. Seconds to go. This is the Dial-a-Shuttle program. A very successful mission. 2 satellites deployed, the arm tested, getaway special conducted, continuous flow electrophoresis system experimented on. Everything went extremely well. Challenger, Houston, 20 seconds to LOS. Configure LOS. We'll see you at Guam at 1+43 and have a good bird. To go before we lose communication. Mission Control pointing out that they'll talk to the astronauts once again over Guam tracking station, wishing them a good bird, which will start to take place in less than 4 minutes. Disappointing for NASA, I'm sure, that they could not return to NASA shuttle control. Botswana has lost a signal. We're 3 minutes, 38 seconds away from the orbit of ignition. And Frank Hauk reported APU number 1 was started prior to LOS at Botswana. Guam's the next station in 24 minutes, 20 seconds. We'll get a burn report at that station. And the MLS are both working okay? At 6 days, 1 hour, 20 minutes mission elapsed time. This is Shuttle Control, Houston.
Challenger now flying 180 miles above the Indian Ocean, and Mission Control won't be able to confirm that this deorbit burn maneuver took place until Challenger reaches Guam. But during this nearly 3-minute maneuver, Challenger should drop more than 300 feet per second. As it enters the Earth's atmosphere, the view from inside the cockpit should be glorious. The orange glow of the fiery reentry, and the weather at Edwards Air Force Base is good too, especially the visibility. The opposite story from the clouds and fog we saw this morning at the Kennedy Space Center. It's still socked in. One of the 3 auxiliary power units has been started. Mission Control plans to activate only 1 additional hydraulic power unit after this deorbit maneuver. The only minor problem so far, a data glitch in the display unit in front of Rick Hawk, and the crew's been told to watch that. 30 seconds away from the deorbit maneuver. The landing at the Dryden Flight Research Center should come at 8:57 this morning. The mini convoy on hand at Edwards Air Force Base has already made it to runway 15, but because of the last-minute change, the convoy can only secure the vehicle and power it down. They cannot purge possible dangerous gases. The deorbit maneuver should now be taking place. Of course, this sudden last-minute change will add to the delay in getting Challenger back to Florida. We also don't know who's going to greet the crew. A NASA spokesman jokingly told me a little while ago that it could be someone in greasy coveralls. Dick Truly, the commander of STS-8, who also flew on STS-2, has been flying around checking the weather. He will be on hand, and he said he'll give them a good greeting. NASA's top management will have to watch from Florida, though. They chose Kennedy to go to, and they're on the wrong side of the country this morning. Challenger will re-enter the Earth's atmosphere in about 30 minutes. Of course, we'll update you then, and we'll begin live coverage of Challenger's return home beginning at 8:50 this morning. I'm Wayne Dolcefino, KTRH News, live at the Johnson Space Center.
CBS News, this is Charles Osgood. There are 5 disappointed people aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger this morning.
We would like to go in there very much, but if the weather's bad, that's not the right thing to do, and we understand.
That was Challenger's Commander Robert Crippen after being told by Mission Control that plans to land the shuttle at Cape Canaveral this morning had been scrubbed due to bad weather. Instead, Challenger will land a little less than an hour from now at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Beech Rogers of CBS station KNX is there.
Weather conditions are ideal with only high, thin clouds at 25,000 feet. Visibility is 10 miles. Crosswinds on runway 15, the prime dry lakebed strip, are 8 to 10 miles an hour. Astronaut Dick Truly is flying approach and landing tests in an aircraft to assess any changes in those conditions. Post-flight operation crews here at Edwards Air Force Base are busily preparing to receive the Challenger after getting the word weather in Florida is unacceptable for a landing there. What is being called a mini convoy team of 12 vehicles is being moved into position, ready to assess the orbiter's safety upon landing, powering it down, and assisting the crew to leave their 6-day home. Beech Rogers for CBS News, Edwards Air Force Base.
More after this.
Utah. Challenger is about 1 minute away from the card requisition through Guam. Utah. For a burn report there. Aye. And a reminder that our Dial-a-Shuttle team was flown in via American Airlines, America's leading airline. We are 37 seconds away from acquisition of signals. They have just crossed the equator, heading in a northeasterly direction. They are just about over the Palau Islands. In a few minutes, they will be passing almost directly over Guam and Saipan, Tinian, and they'll be passing out into the middle of the Pacific near Kure Island. But by that time, Challenger Houston with you at Guam for 8 minutes. Configure AOS. Okay, lock. We had a confirm on time. Potential for language pool. We got 3 keys running here. Wanted to the normal burn, 3 and low. Roger. Those were the shuttle astronauts aboard STS-7 reporting a normal burn. Everything's fine. They're heading back home. They're heading to a little bit different place than they expected to. They had hoped to come into Kennedy, and they will be going into Edwards Air Force Base, landing in 39 minutes, 10 seconds. They're within range of the Guam tracking station now. They are heading forward. The payload bays doors are closed. They're plunging down through the atmosphere in 8 minutes and 1 second, they will reach the 400,000-foot mark above sea level. That's what's called entry interphase. That's when they begin to really heat up, begin the sort of fireball phase, and they'll be out of touch with the ground. Probably we won't receive much from them as they pass through the Hawaii tracking station area, simply because the ionized gas layers around them don't allow radio waves to get through. On the 98th orbit now, 6 days, 1 hour, 45 minutes, 26 seconds into the flight of STS-7. This has been a very successful and historic flight. The first American woman in space, and contrary to Russian women astronauts or cosmonauts, Sally Ride is a bona fide astronaut and engineer. The others were essentially passengers picked for political and publicity purposes. Sally Ride has proved that it's the job, not the gender, that's important. First time 5 people have ever been launched on one spacecraft. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the first time when they land at Kennedy Space Center. That was a major flight objective, but they didn't make that. But they did successfully deploy 2 communication satellites, which are now on their way to their proper stations high above the Earth, or most of their mission. And when they reach the 400,000 foot above sea level mark, they will be traveling 25 times the speed of sound. For comparison, most commercial jetliners don't travel above 40,000 feet, so they're 10 times higher than most commercial jetliners travel right now. This is shuttle control. Bob has lost the signal. Blackout begins at 6 days, 1 hour, 55 minutes, 29 seconds, and ends at 6 days, 2 hours, 10 minutes, 47 seconds. Got on time the orbit burn and 3 auxiliary power units up and running. Challenger now committed to a landing at Edwards Air Force Base. At 6 days, 1 hour, 51 minutes. This is shuttle control, Houston. Right. Television from Dryden has been showing the STA making approaches. You're listening to Dial-a-Shuttle. Dial-a-Shuttle is brought to you by the National Space Institute, the nation's oldest citizens group supporting the space program, with a grant from the makers of Tang, the breakfast drink that's been aboard every U.S. manned space program since 1965. NSI receives no money from your telephone calls to this service. If you'd like to see Dial-a-Shuttle continue, please send your tax-deductible contributions to NSI, Suite 203W, 600 Maryland Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20024. Thank you. And you are listening to Dial-a-Shuttle from the National Space Institute. Thank you for calling. Our NASA closed-circuit cameras are showing us a convoy of official vehicles, fire trucks, out at the Edwards Air Force Base. It's very early morning. The sun has just come up on the Mojave Desert there. Edwards Air Force Base is really adjacent to the Dryden Flight Research Center. It's Dryden that is the NASA facility, and Edwards is an Air Force base out there in the Mojave Desert. The shuttle is now crossing the Pacific, heading north of Hawaii, and just about now is being engulfed by a fireball from the heat of its passage, the atmosphere around it being ionized, and that will last until about another 16 minutes. This is shuttle control. Challenger unit sensible atmosphere at approximately 400,000 feet about 2 minutes, 10 seconds ago. Clock in the Mission Control Center showing 28 minutes, 37 seconds to touchdown. And you're listening to Dial-a-Shuttle comes to you live from the National Space Institute at the Control Center in Johnson Space Center, Houston, Texas. Coming up now. Here on the monitors in the news center. Flight Dynamics Officer Ross Bolt. The entry final. You're listening to Dial-a-Shuttle. The orbiter now passing down through 320,000 feet above sea level. Passing north of Hawaii. By the time it gets out of the blackout, it will be at 170,000 feet above sea level and traveling much, much slower than it is now. It'll be down to about Mach 10 or 12 or so. Now traveling Mach 25. That's 25 times the speed of sound. The shuttle is totally out of touch now for another 10 minutes, roughly.
Friday morning, everybody. I'm Chet Douglas with the latest from ABC News. Heavy clouds over the Kennedy Space Center in Florida have thrown a monkey wrench into this morning's space shuttle landing there. It had been scheduled to happen in Florida, but the bad weather forced a quick shift to Edwards Air Force Base in California. The Challenger is now headed that way, as we hear in this late report from ABC's Vic Ratner.
High over the Indian Ocean, Challenger fired its rocket engines for 2.5 minutes, enough to slow the shuttle down by only 200 miles an hour, but that was enough to drop the ship out of orbit and plunging down through the atmosphere. Roaring across the Pacific at 16,000 miles an hour, Challenger's communications have now disappeared for 15 heart-stopping minutes because of the searing heat of re-entry. But NASA says at last communication everything was going well. In a few minutes, the shuttle is due to sweep across the California coast, make a wide U-turn over Edwards Air Force Base, and land in the California desert. Vic Ratner, ABC News at the Kennedy Space Center.
And Vic, usually there are thousands and thousands of people on hand, space fans, waiting to see the big ship land. Today, there'll be none of those. New floods in the west after this.
14 minutes and 14 seconds away from touchdown, and about a minute away or less from hearing from the astronauts again as they get out of the fireball that surrounded them, the ionized gases dissipating the heat of their motion. We should hear from Mission Control sometime within the next minute that they've reacquired the Challenger on its way back down. Processing data from the Western Test Range. Shows Mach 13, altitude 178,000 feet. Should be within voice contact right about now. So they have contact with it via telemetry. Should have voice any second. If they were flying their regular orbit, they'd be out of touch with the ground in about 12 minutes, but they're going to be landing in 13. So they're heading straight for Edwards Air Force Base now. Expecting AOS Buckhorn. AOS Buckhorn, acquisition of signal. Buckhorn is the tracking station at Edwards Air Force Base. So, they've got the signal. Looks like things. Challenger, Houston, configure AOS. Houston, Challenger, all clear, nice and smooth all the way down. Real good, Crip. It'll be about 5 to 7 tenths later on, triple right. Roger, we see that. Oh, usage look like it's pretty close to normal. Roger that. Challenger's in good shape. 170,000 feet above sea. Energy and ground track nominal. Everything working fine. The shuttle through its most critical phase of the fireball down to about 170,000 feet, coming down rapidly. This is Dial-a-Shuttle. We will be with you. Challenger, Houston, your energy, your ground track, your nav are nominal. Your go for PTIs. Roger, go for PTIs. We'll put them in.
Dial-a-Shuttle will bring you the post-landing press conference beginning at approximately 10 o'clock Central Time.
Altitude 160,000 feet at Mach 9.3. At a range to the runway of 330 miles.
You're listening to Dial-a-Shuttle, brought to you by the National Space Institute, the nation's oldest citizens group supporting the space program. The grant from the makers of TAG.
Challenger being flown in the automatic mode.
NSI received the Challenger. We got 3 TAC-ins locked up. They all look good. Roger, take TAC-in. Roger. TAC-in is a radio navigation signal, and they're locked onto 3 stations.
Challenger incorporating the technical air navigation system. Mach 8 at 149,000 feet. Range 265 miles.
They will be coming into the coast north of Santa Barbara and then passing to the north, going to the north of Fallsdale and Lancaster, out a little bit to the east of Edwards Air Force Base, swinging back around in a left-hand turn. Challenger, Houston, did you just go? That's a negative. Roger. A reminder that NSI receives no money from your telephone calls to this service. If you'd like to see Dial-a-Shuttle,
Challenger out of 138,000 feet now at Mach 6.8.
if you'd like to see Dial-a-Shuttle continue, then
range 210 miles.
Please send your tax-deductible contributions to NSI, Suite 203 West, 600 Maryland Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20024. Our Dial-a-Shuttle team was flown in via American Airlines, America's leading airline. Good morning. Thank you for calling. This is Dr. Mark Chartrand with the National Space Institute. 9 minutes, 29 seconds from landing. We are
Mach 6 at 129,000 feet and 179 nautical mile range.
That was Mission Control reporting on the successful flight of Challenger, coming in one orbit after they expected into a different airport. But one thing that shows is the adaptability of the shuttle. That it can.
Challenger approaching Santa Rosa and Santa Cruz Islands offshore from the California coast now. Mach 5.4, altitude's 120,000 feet.
Should be at about 110,000 feet when they cross the coastline. And they'll be making a turn to the left, to the north. Challenger Houston, we see a low pressure on GN2 tank for water spray boiler number 3. We'd like you to switch controllers. Okay, going Bravo on number 3. Minutes and 15 seconds from landing. Everything working fine. The shuttle on its way in. Should be crossing the California coast. Challenger Houston, transfer the state vector to backup.
Challenger approaching the coastline now between Ventura and Oxnard. Mach 4. Range 100 miles.
So crossing the coast. Say one more. We're waiting up to California. Roger that. That line's been used before. That's the first STS crew. What a way to throw it down the Philippines. Then we're making a turn to the left. Challenger Houston, we do not see the left probe deployed. We'd like you to cycle the switch.
The flight of Shuttle 7. I'm Steve Young, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida. Well, Crippen, Houck, Ride, Fabian, and Thagard, the Challenger crew, are landing this morning at Edwards Air Force Base in California because fog prevented what would have been a Florida landing. Our crew this morning, Judy Muller here with me at the Kennedy Space Center, and Beech Rogers in California. Judy, you've seen the shuttle land at Edwards. Fog aside, is it easier or harder than here?
It's easier, Steve. There's a greater margin for error at Edwards. The California runway is surrounded by more of what the runway is made of, desert. The runway here at Kennedy has been described as unforgiving, surrounded as it is by water, savanna, and swamps, home to some 4,000 alligators. No chance of alligators wandering onto the runway at Edwards, of course.
Beach, they don't have the full recovery convoy out there that they would have had here. Is that a problem?
Not at all. 12 key vehicles manned by 21 experienced recovery personnel. They've done it 5 times before when Columbia and Challenger have returned here, so that's not expected to be a problem at all, and they're on station, ready to go.
Okay, our coverage of the landing of Shuttle 7 continues in a minute.
If you think the new all-in-one money management accounts are a good idea, listen carefully. Now, Charles Schwab & Company, America's largest discount brokerage firm, goes them all one better with the Charles Schwab One account. This new way to manage your securities and cash lets you open your Schwab One account with as little as $1,000 in cash or $5,000 in securities, not $20,000 like most of the others. Schwab One is a discount brokerage account that saves you up to 75% on commissions when you buy and sell stocks. You get a free Visa card with a 1% rebate on everything you buy and check writing privileges. You can place securities orders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on weekends. You'll get high money interest rates compounded daily on your uninvested cash. The Charles Schwab One account. To find out more, phone toll-free in the continental U.S. for the Schwab One brochure. 800-228-6600. It goes them all one better. That's 800-228-6600, except in Nebraska. Call now. Member SIPC.
Well, the long optics out in California are now showing that Challenger is approaching Edwards Air Force Base. The last readings they had were 66,000 feet, about 36 nautical miles away. How does it seem to be going, Judy?
Looks like they're going to be just subsonic soon. Of course, in California, as it crosses over towards the California desert, people along the way can hear those twin sonic booms. It should wake them up if they aren't already awake. We can see it looking good on the long optic NASA cameras, shining in the early sun of California, Steve.
They were using TACON, the Tactical Air Navigation System, until just a few minutes ago. They've got a microwave landing system which provides more accurate indications there, both of their azimuth, that is their direction, head-on into the runway, as well as their altitude and bearing. It could be an automatic landing, but it won't be, will it, in the end?
No, it probably, Crippen will probably take over. He likes to land it himself. And you can see the angle of descent is very, very steep. They're coming in at a 22-degree angle of descent. That's 7 times steeper than a commercial aircraft comes in. Let's listen to mission control.
From the south at 10 knots.
10 knots from the south. Not much of a wind to deal with. That's a nice quality of landing at Edwards Air Force Base. They don't have many problems to deal with.
Airspeed 255 knots. Altitude 34,000 feet.
They get an altitude reading like
the hack now.
Any other airplane. They're coming into the hack.
18 miles to touchdown.
18 miles to touchdown, not far away from that vast desert runway at Edwards Air Force Base.
They're having to shed an awful lot of energy, too, in these final moments.
Out of 30,000 feet at 257 knots.
Still coming in at a steep angle of descent.
Beginning the wide sweeping left turn around the hack.
The hack is an imaginary circle relay that the pilot follows. It's on his computer terminal inside. He can watch that and guide the shuttle as it comes around.
25,000 feet. 260 knots.
He will soon have to bring the nose up in a pre-flare maneuver to try to break that steep angle of descent. And it looks as if they are doing that now. He's coming in not quite so steeply. I should hear confirmation of that soon.
20,000 feet. 258 knots.
At 20,000 feet, they should still be on automatic mode. That's pretty much pilot's discretion, but they were to be on automatic from 30,000.
Challenger turning final now.
Final turn out of the hack. Coming out of that imaginary...
Right on the nominal track. Flight Dynamics Officer Willis Bolt reports.
Sun catching her as she makes that final turn towards the runway, the dry lake bed.
On glide slope and turning toward the center line.
Remember, of course, that this is now a glider.
14,000 feet.
No engines on this craft.
292 knots.
Energy looks good. Surface wind 180 at 10.
They've got one chance to make it. No fly-arounds for the shuttle. Right on course and looking good.
10,000 feet at 282 knots. On glide slope on center line.
Beautiful blue skies. They're certainly a stark contrast to what Kennedy has. Of course, that's the reason they're there. Not a cloud in that sky.
6,500 feet, 281 knots.
Very close now to the runway, coming in right on course. Crippen, of course, will be taking over, landing the craft himself. Rick Houck, the pilot, sitting next to him.
2,900 feet, 287 knots.
Still coming in, of course, very fast. And
Get the wheels, guys.
here it comes. We can see the backdrop of the mountains.
Wheels are down, yeah.
Wheels are down. And we are down.
Definitely down.
Definitely down. And Beech Rogers out in California, what's your view there?
Well, we had a spectacular view for this landing, better than ever before, mainly because of runway 15, which parallels our vantage point here. Big cloud of dust being kicked up now as the shuttle continues its rollout.
Back home.
Here's to be a perfect landing.
The unofficial touchdown time, in mission elapsed time, 6 days, 2 hours, 24 minutes, 10 seconds.
Coming to a stop now, still rolling. In a moment, those 12 vehicles, post-operations vehicles, will begin to attach themselves. First they'll approach and then attach themselves to the orbiter. Still rolling, very slowly now. And should just about have a stop now. Not much conversation coming from the astronaut.
Roger, we see that. Congratulations, a great-looking landing. And from the entry team, got some good news. Good news is the beer is very, very cold this morning. Bad news is it's 3,000 miles away.
There was a hoot and a holler beach in Judy as they landed and kicked up a cloud of dust. They are going to be, what, half an hour at least before they are able to get out?
Yes, they've got to seal up those doors for quite a while they check out all the systems, make sure there's no toxic gases escaping from the shuttle.
They'll be hooking up some hoses to the rear in the area where those engines are located, which produce the potential toxic gases. Then letting the five-person crew,
well, Sally Ride and the other guys, right?
Right, Sally and the other guys. And somewhere in the next couple of hours, they should find themselves back in Houston to begin the endless series of medical debriefings to prepare the way for the next shuttle mission in August. For my colleagues Judy Muller and Beech Rogers, I'm Steve Young, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Well, we had a spectacular view for this landing, better than ever before, mainly because of runway 15, which parallels our vantage point here. Big cloud of dust being kicked up now as the shuttle continues its rollout. Coming to a stop now, still rolling. moment, those 12 vehicles, post-operations vehicles, will begin to attach themselves. First they'll approach and then attach themselves to the orbiter. Still rolling very slowly now. And should just about have a stop now.
Beech Rogers at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Judy Muller has been following the flight of Challenger at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. She has a live recap of the mission.
Of course, as you heard me say, it was a return to Earth just moments ago for Sally Ride, the first American woman in space, and her crewmates, Crippen, Houck, Thagard, and Fabian. It's been a nearly flawless mission with the only major setback caused by something the crew couldn't control, the weather. A fog crept in on big cat feet at Kennedy Space Center this morning and then sat on its haunches and refused to budge. That forced the Challenger to go around a couple of extra orbits and land at Edwards in California. This was to have been the first ever landing for a shuttle at the Kennedy runway. The next shuttle scheduled to try it is STS-7 in January. But Challenger's crew did accomplish all other major objectives, including the first retrieval of a reusable satellite from space with the orbiter's mechanical arm. That prompted Commander Crippen to coin a new motto for this crew: we pick up and deliver. Judy Muller, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida.
10 o'clock.
CBS News, I'm Mitchell Krause.
Challenger's back home, back to Earth.
The voice of mission control as the 102-ton space shuttle Challenger touched down just over an hour ago at Edwards Air Force Base in California, diverted in the final hours of its flight from landing at Florida because of bad weather.
Congratulations, a great-looking landing. And from the entry team, got some good news. Good news is the pier is very, very cold this morning. The bad news is it's 3,000 miles away.
This is Judy Muller at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The 5 crew members of Challenger, Ride, Crippen, Houck, Fabian, and Thagard, bounded down the gangway of the shuttle this hour and immediately took a walk around the spacecraft that served them so well during their 6-day mission. Laughing and with arms around each other, they appeared to be quite fit. They are now being checked out by NASA doctors at the medical building at Edwards Air Force Base, where the shuttle was forced to land when fog ruled out a scheduled landing in Florida. The Challenger was to have been the first shuttle to land back at launch site, but it managed to accomplish several other firsts anyway. It was the first to release and retrieve a satellite in space, and the first to carry an American woman crew member. Judy Muller, CBS News, Kennedy Space Center, Florida.
A Supreme Court decision on airbags in autos, that after this.
Roger, we see that. Congratulations, a great-looking landing. And from the entry team, got some good news. Good news is the pier is very, very cold this morning. The bad news is it's 3,000 miles away.
That's what I was afraid of.
There was no red carpet either. It was 3,000 miles away at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, along with NASA officials and the families of the 5-member crew of Challenger, the largest human cargo ever to fly in space. The inaugural landing in Florida was simply not to be this day. Clouds and fog blanketed Cape Kennedy, and after orbiting the Earth twice, waiting for it to clear, Challenger headed for California and Edwards Air Force Base. It was another picture-perfect landing, and while the 6-day mission was an overwhelming success, NASA's number 3 man, Lieutenant General James Abramson, says the failure to land in Florida was a disappointment.
I would guess that perhaps the most disappointed person of all is Crippen, because Bob had worked long and hard to be ready to bring it in here. He certainly was ready to bring it in here, and had the weather been just a little better, I'm sure that he would have wanted to take that particular important step in the program.
The crew of Challenger will arrive back in Houston this afternoon sometime after 4 o'clock for ceremonies here at the Johnson Space Center. Challenger should be on its way back to Florida next week, a delay that could set back the launch of Shuttle Mission 8 in August. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Wayne Dolcefino, KTRH News.
Sally K. Ride Elementary School, named for America's first woman in space, will open this fall in the Woodlands community north of Houston. Officials call Ms. Ride's achievements a milestone in our nation's history, representing academic progress at its best. School district has honored the first man on the moon, astronaut Neil Armstrong, by naming a school after him.